Hello, welcome back from spring break. For the next four lessons, we're going to be talking about the issue of polarization. And it's a big issue. So, and it's important. So, scholars are talking about, politicians are talking about it, voters are talking about it. But it also kind of brings everything we've studied this semester kind of into one heading. And so that's the what reason we end with it. So let's just start with some basic definitions. Webster's dictionary defines partisanship as prejudice or bias in favor of a political cause. And you could pretty much say that anyone who takes a stand on anything and aligns that stand with a certain party is a partisan. And so that's not the problem. I mean, it's not a problem that FDR was a Democrat or that Eisenhower was a Republican. That the partisanship itself isn't the problem. The problem is polarization. So political scientists define partisanship as a voter or politician committed to a particular party or ideology. Um, but polarization is the divergence of political attitudes around ideological extremes. So we're talking about a kind of radical partisanship becomes polarization. The reason that we care about this is because we start talking about things like a loss of common ground, difficulty resolving issues through compromise policy, and a rise of partisan identity in a negative way. So just like when we think about this, we have to kind of go back to our voting structure systems lesson. The first past the post voting system leads to a two-party system, and in general, one is more liberal and the other is more conservative on the issues of the day. So the issues that are liberal today might be conservative tomorrow, or vice versa. But an issue isn't fundamentally liberal or conservative. The economy isn't, liberal or conservative. It just is, and you take a stand along that spectrum. Um, the parties themselves have a wide spectrum of ideologies. For instance, the Republican Party is currently made up of Wall Street and big business voters, Chamber of Commerce or small business voters, white evangelical Christians, Second Amendment and personal libertarians, and people who hold a foreign policy consistent with the conservative ideology. And you might have a white evangelical Christian who is opposed to the policies of Wall Street, but it's a big tent, and a two-party system by its nature has to be a big tent. And so the real question that keeps coming up is, does the current political structure allow us to solve the big important public problems? There is a real feeling right now that the system itself is broken. Political compromise is harder to reach. People don't want to talk to each other, and the legislation that's coming out is considerably less what we call substantial. So the number of bills hasn't changed, but in the last Congress, a third of the bills passed were considered ceremonial. I mean, declaring the first Tuesday of September National Egg Day isn't really solving our big national problems. And since we are facing tough, important issues, and politics is getting in the way of it, we have a problem. Um, when we start talking about this issue, we have to look at, is this a system level thing or a leader level thing? In other words, one of the reasons that Donald Trump is president today is not so much because of Donald Trump, because the system, the ideology produced Donald Trump because he lost by 3 million votes. It's because the electoral system led to Donald Trump, and so at a systems level. The electoral college is a systems level thing that influences policy. Leader level things are where you have political leadership, either elected officials or behind the scenes people who are manipulating the system. And it isn't so much a matter of reforming the system as it is getting better leaders. And so that is a really important kind of distinction that we will consider throughout the next four lessons. Another thing, though, is it matters because we have people asking, are we truly a representative democracy? Our founding myth is that we the people, one person, one vote, and all of that. And if that is called into serious question, what does that hold for the future of our country? We also are beginning to ask questions about if what happens to our democracy if people are unwilling to accept the results of an election? Always in our system, there was the idea that that if you lose this round, you'll win the next one, and that there's a place for you at the table, whether or not you're at the head of the table. And the polarization that we're currently experiencing is leading people to ask, what happens if you're permanently shut out of the table, and what happens to our politics, and do people pursue a different kind of set of reforms and not really want to work through the democratic system? So that's what we're dealing with. We're going to go on and talking a little bit about the history of political parties in terms of kind of how we got here.